Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films that we think might be underrated, underappreciated, or we just wanted to talk about them. I'm your host for this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm here as I am every week with the wonderful Alice Oliver. Alice, say hello.
Hey there. Hi, guys.
We're going to be talking about a film of Alice's choice this week, which is Catfish, the documentary movie which then spawned the TV show from 2010. So, let's see what we think. Okay. Alice.
Josh.
Bit of something different this week.
Well, this is what I thought. I thought it was about time.
You're rooting around in the takeaway menu thing in your house, and you're thinking, I'm a bit sick of this, I'm a bit sick of that. Let's try that place that we tried that one time.
Something totally different.
Something a bit different. It's a documentary. We've not done a documentary before. So, tell the lovely people listening, what is Catfish about, and why did you pick it for this?
So, Catfish is about a young man who starts a kind of online relationship with a young girl who's an artist. She's been painting photographs that he has had published. He obviously finds this very flattering. He thinks, oh, this 8-year-old girl is really talented. Abby, her name is. So they sort of become like pen pals almost. He then starts speaking to her mother and then her sister. He becomes quite romantically attached to the sister. She posts a lot of photos on Facebook. She is very attractive. She's very talkative, and they seem to really like each other. The problem is that this sister, Megan, she doesn't actually exist. It's the mum, Angela, or the whole time. She's made about 16 different Facebook profiles to kind of catfish Neve and to get her to think that actually she is this girl, Megan, and to continue their relationship. So once Neve kind of figures out that this is what's going on, he sort of, tries to figure out, well, why? How has this happened? Why has she done this? And it basically climaxes with them going to her house because they have her address, because they've been sending her stuff. Like he'll send her photographs for the daughter, Abby, to paint. So they turn up and they kind of get a confession out of the mum, out of Angela. She says, no, it was me the whole time. There is no Megan, and all these people, all these profiles were all just me. And there spawns the word catfish, which has become iconic. It's become synonymous now with the idea of someone pretending to be someone else online to get you into a romantic relationship with them, or even to just be a friend. Like a catfish can be a friend.
To gain something themselves in some way or whatever.
And so they kind of created this whole notion. And obviously now we've got the TV show, which is still going. I love the TV show. I still watch it. The reason I picked this one was, like you say, I wanted to go for something a little bit different. I also I think it's a bit underseen, and I think it's a little bit underappreciated as well. Okay. I don't think it's underrated. It did pretty well across the board, really. But I don't know if anyone's still watching it. I feel like people are watching the TV show, but I don't even know if people know that there was a film. Do you know what I mean? And people just don't seem to talk about it. It never comes up. So I was like, okay, let's go back. Let's watch it. And interesting to watch it now, having seen how the TV show has evolved. Like it's in around its 8th season now, and it has evolved from what it once was, still with the same principle at its core, which is finding out, helping people discover who it is they've been speaking to online. So had you seen this one? I assume you'd heard of it.
So I'd heard of it. I my honest answer of if I've seen it before is I don't know. So my girlfriend likes the series. I've seen episodes of the series. I've always enjoyed it when I've watched it. I've not religiously watched it, but I've always enjoyed it when it's been on. Because it's quite an interesting concept, isn't it? Why
it is.
It's not. I think it is a concept because it's a reality show, isn't it? Essentially.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing people I think can be quite sniffy about and label it as trash and that sort of thing. Because some reality TV is, and I've said before, I don't like certain reality TV shows. I struggle with them and stuff. But this isn't one of them. I think it's interesting because what is interesting about it is what would drive somebody to do this. Because if you're not trying to con somebody to get something for yourself that is, money, something, then why are you doing it? Something must drive someone to do something like this. In terms of had I seen it before, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, is I've definitely seen bits of it before, but
Yeah,
I
like
don't
some
know
of it
if
was familiar sort of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
but I don't know if that's because my partner's seen the film, because she's
Mm-hmm.
definitely seen the film because she told me she had, or if it's because they layer bits of the film into the series, you know, sometimes like they cut back to it or whatever. Because so those who haven't seen the show, Neve, who is the subject of this documentary, is the host of the documentary, basically. So he
Yeah.
goes around helping people who think that they are being catfished by other people. So I knew what to expect. I knew what happened in it because my partner had watched it before, and I was really interested to watch it start to finish, regardless of if I'd seen it before. And like we've already touched on, it is our first documentary. I've been thinking for ages about a documentary to pick, and I've got a couple on my list. This wasn't one of them.
Interesting.
Yeah, because because we're running out of ideas, Alice. No, it's not.
As it. Right, listen,
No.
my list is about 6 years long.
Yeah, same. I think I'd die of old age before I got through all the films we want to do. Unless we start doing one a day instead of one a week or whatever.
Oh,
but
wow.
we
Can you
don't have
imagine?
the time. Once we've both retired,
Yes,
and
that'll
we're
be
making
it.
a daily podcast.
That's when we'll hit our stride.
Because the problem with films and covering them is, and I don't know if anyone listening to this knows this, but is they keep fucking making films. so there's always new ones to talk about. Anyway, so you've rewatched this. Well, we've both watched it. You've rewatched it. What did you think?
So I did enjoy it, and I did think it was quite strong and quite powerful in a lot of areas. So the main thing that I wanted to kind of re-examine, and the main reason that I feel like it's a bit underappreciated, is because of what Neve is doing in this. He is fully exposing his emotions, his thought process, his romantic life. He's just laying it all out there for everyone to see. And I feel like that is quite, I don't mean to sound wanky, as you would say, but it's pretty brave. I think it's pretty brave and it's pretty bold what he was doing. And you've got to remember, this was just before social media really did its thing and changed our lives, for good. I mean, not for good as in good or bad. I mean, it, indefinitely.
Permanently.
Yes, exactly. So it was before Instagram, it's before TikTok. Like, it's not uncommon now to go on social media and see someone laying it all out there, telling you every single little detail about their life. Oh, I've just been broken up with. Oh, here's a video of me crying. Like,
just
that's
jacked
so...
it, feeling pretty mellow.
Exactly. And that's all over the place now. But at the time, it wasn't. So I feel like what he's doing here is just so bold and takes a lot of guts, and he allowed it to happen. So I was really interested to see him again. I have a lot of affection for him. Like I say, I really enjoy the show. I think what he does is great. He has a wonderful way about him. Because obviously the reason that they started the TV show was because they got so much correspondence after the film came out of people saying, oh my God, this exact same thing has happened to me, like, and all this. So they thought, right, well, there's something here, isn't there? There's something to this. There's people to help. And the way he conducts himself, I just think is really, really mature, really, really understanding. So that was kind of the main thing. The other thing as well is that there's some really strong editing in this, and the way that they construct the scenes, because obviously they're working with very little, really. So they do a good job of trying to keep you engaged and keeping the edits up there. They use things like photographs, paintings, Google Maps, web pages, text messages, and messages that they send to one another online. And this does a really good job of keeping you engaged and keeping you wanting to watch more. Because on paper, the concept, it can sound a little bit bland, and it's like, how do you make this exciting? Yeah. But they found a way to do it, I thought.
It's very visual.
Yeah,
it does a really good job of telling a visually engaging story, because the subject matter is quite boring, really, if you think about it. Not boring, but if it was just people in a hotel room figuring stuff out, or people in an apartment figuring stuff out, it'd be a 20-minute, half an hour documentary, right? So like you say, what they do is they show maps, text messages, pictures, photos, videos. They use a really interesting use of music as well. I thought there's a sort of metronomic music that goes all the way through it, which felt a bit like a mixture, really, of things like some Pixar films do it. They use sort of a metronomic ticking type music, and it reminded me a little bit of some Woody Allen films as well. That sort of use of music to give dark subject matter a lift, really, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And even things down to little bits. There's little bits of detail and editing that they do, like you said, which gives a charm to it. Like, I know this is a really daft thing, but I always have a bit of a soft spot for when a film alters the studio logo.
Okay, yeah.
You know, because at the beginning they changed the Universal logo to look all pixelated and look like a,
Right, okay, yeah.
you know, it looked like it would be on Facebook, and then that's when that
Yeah.
music comes in. And I always find that a personalised touch for the film, I guess. It's just something
yeah.
that endears me to a film.
So what did you think about it overall then? Like, what is your impression of it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it mostly overall. I think it was a
Okay.
really good use of the documentary format for the sort of things we were just talking about there, in that it's a visually compelling story. I think a lot of documentaries can sometimes fall into two camps, which is they can be quite isolating for people who then think that the subject matter is too niche or too intellectual, so it isolates them a little bit. Or the other way is people think it goes a bit trashy, which is something we said before. That's not something necessarily I think, but I do think people can avoid documentaries for those reasons. But overall, I found it entertaining. I found it engaging. I think I enjoyed that it explores the issue kind of in real time, so you are discovering things as Neve does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like,
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
it's like it's almost like a real life detective story sort of thing.
Mm.
We talk about so often how films can be an exploration of something like loneliness or escapism, an exercise, if you will. That we are now watching a film that is exploring the reason for that. I thought that had a nice symmetry.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No, interesting take.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting, and it was it was quite tight. You know, it's not even 90 minutes, is it? So
Yeah.
it's I appreciated that in a way, because
I know you do.
yeah, and I don't.
The shorter the better.
but then, you know, it is a subject matter and a topic that you can get years out of, because they have done with the documentary format.
And I imagine there was hours and hours and hours of
Yeah.
footage. And to cut through all that and to come away with what they did, I think was really impressive. And it does feel really raw, like the way the documentary's made. It feels so budget. Like the sound isn't great, the cameras aren't great. Like it's all really shaky and stuff. There's nothing staged about it, it doesn't feel like. And there's no scripted, you know, pieces to cameras or separate interviews on the side. There's no voiceover. You get every now and then a bit of text on screen that'll explain a little bit and just sort of help the audience along. But that's quite rare, and it never gives away too much. So it's you're trusting your audience a lot there to kind of to follow you on the journey and to kind of stay with you there, which I do enjoy. You know, they don't need to handhold us all the way through, but like it's just not polished at all. Like it's rough and ready.
Yes,
and
it
that
is.
adds, I think, to the tension and adds to sort of the adrenaline that you feel kind of when Neve starts finding out all these things. You know, like so Megan, who is the sort of fake daughter who he thinks he's speaking to and has a romantic attachment to, is a singer also. And so he's like, oh, can you, sing me this song, or can you send me a version of you singing this? And he listens to it. He's like, oh yeah, this is beautiful. I love it. And then he does a bit of Googling and finds the video on YouTube, and it's just a different woman singing that song. And he's like, what? And you see the confusion on his face, and you feel it too. And I feel like you're just right there with him all the way. And there was a lot of this going on throughout. And I think testament as well to Rel, who's obviously filming it, his brother, for capturing all the right moments, for always having that camera there, for never letting him rest. He's like, I'm going to film you every second of every day, every time you speak to it, every time you find out a new piece of information. Because it is like, and you know, I like being down there, it is this rabbit hole. It's this weird kind of, this tunnel, this weirdness of how much weirder can it get? Because he never even thought for a second that this is what was going to happen. Like I think he says in the film, he thought the documentary was going to be about his friendship with this child who is an artist who appreciates
like
him
a
as
child
a photographer.
prodigy. It's like a child prodigy sort of thing,
exactly.
isn't it? Yeah.
And it's like with every sort of 5 minutes, he finds out a new thing, and it's like, oh well, this doesn't add up, and oh hang on,
and
this
even
doesn't
at the
add
end,
up either.
Even at the end, spoilers if you've not seen it, or if you don't, if you don't want it spoiled. Then skip 5 minutes or whatever. But even at the end, it's so mad that they can't fit all of the twists and turns in the actual video, so they have to put some text at the end that's like, oh, and also this other stuff that she revealed to
this
be.
happened, yeah.
So she makes up lies to cover lies, doesn't she? And then at the end she
yeah.
goes, "Also, that's not true. That's not true, and that's not true." So,
Yeah.
so she thinks they find her, and he says, Megan is real. That she's in. I think she's meant to be in rehab or having some health issues or something at the time.
Yeah, she says she's an alcoholic and she's had to go away for some help. Yeah,
and that Angela herself has cancer, and then it goes on, and then it finishes. It just sort of goes, she didn't have cancer, and also Megan actually wasn't real.
Yeah, no, she wasn't real because she said
never real.
Because when the lie came out about her being not her daughter, she was like, "Oh yeah, those are pictures of a family friend and stuff." And then they were like, "Oh no, she doesn't know this person
just a model,
just
a model."
yeah, just like lies upon lies upon lies.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and this is, I suppose, about the concept in general. Do you think that this and the TV show has helped or hindered the issue? So do you think that it is helping people get the support they need and make people think there's more people like that, me out there, who are lonely? Or is it giving more people the idea to catfish people? I mean, it's impossible to say, I know, but...
Of course, hard one to quantify, but I imagine it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
What you sort of do see with some people who end up going on the show is, I did some of the tricks that you did, like the reverse image search, or I searched their phone number and stuff. So that kind of helps them get to a certain point, and then they contact the show and they're like, but I still can't figure out who this person is. And given the reaction that he had after the film came out, there was obviously a lot of people who did feel kind of despairing and stuff. And I think it's quite cathartic, not just for the person who's getting catfished, but for the catfish as well, it seems. Because a lot of the time, unless you are genuinely just trying to con someone out of money because you need cash, there seems to be a lot of genuine feeling from the person who is doing the catfish. It's just that they're incredibly self-conscious about themselves, either their looks or their weight, whatever it might be, or they feel like they're not being their true selves. There's been a few episodes where sort of transgender people have been on there and they're like, oh, yeah. And they're like, well, I haven't been able to tell anyone that I'm transgender. It's something that I've kept to myself. And so it all comes out. And there's a few of the episodes are really heartwarming and people sort of finish it as good friends. And the person getting catfished is like, they were such a huge part of my life for 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it may be. And I can't just dismiss that. Other times it's a lot more sinister. And it doesn't go well. But
that's the darker side of it, I suppose.
Of course. And that's always going to happen. It's the internet. There's always a darker side to it.
Yes, there is.
But for me, it just, it doesn't feel like the same as some of the other reality TV shows that are out there.
No.
I know obviously at this point, obviously it's probably raking in a fair bit of dollar, it's on MTV. I think they've sold, the rights to it sort of globally. So that's nice and great, whatever. But it just doesn't feel as exploitative. Do you think there's or as tacky it feels a bit as more, some other reality shows?
It feels a bit less cynical, a bit more authentically, in terms of what it's trying to do.
I think so. And I think a lot of that is to do with Neve and the way that he speaks to people. He's never antagonistic towards the catfish. He always tries to come from a place of understanding, of realizing, wow, this person is just lonely. They didn't know how to speak to people. They didn't know how to express themselves. And his co-host at the moment, Cami, is exactly the same as well. She's
they changed it from the guy with the silver hair.
Yeah, well, it used to be Max. So it used to be Max Joseph. Now he took a little bit of a harder stance. He'd be like, why are you doing this to someone? And he sort of just didn't have time for the catfish at all. But I think Neve brings a real softness to it, a real gentleness to it, and he clearly understands that these people are going through something that they just can't articulate, and for whatever reason they feel like they can't be themselves in the real world.
Yeah, and I think a good reality format or idea often stands the test of time for a reason. I think, if you look at something like the Great British Bake Off, there's a reason why that stood the test of time and become a worldwide success, because it's gentle and it's nice, isn't it? It's just whereas
nice.
The nastier side.
It's one of the few TV shows that I will always make time for.
I'm not even always necessarily watching it, but I'll have it on in the background. Whereas other ones, the sort of more the nastier ones, if you will, are either dying off or have had to change their format a little bit to be a little bit more acceptable, I think, in this day and age. Do you know anyone, or have you ever, however, yourself been catfished?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I'm trying to remember back to back to the MSN days and,
Yeah.
the early days of Facebook or MySpace. But
Keanu
no, I don't
Reeves
think
follows us
so.
on Twitter.
There
Or
we
someone,
go. There we go. And I'm sure that's
according
definitely
to the
him.
account name.
Definitely him. Was there anything else you liked about it, or anything else that of note?
Not that I haven't already covered. Really, I think it is a good use of the documentary format, whilst also being entertaining and engaging. And I think that the important message is what we've already touched on, which is, although the actions of Angela they're not great. They are pretty deplorable. They don't really go after her, and I like that. They don't.
No.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't sort of really go for her, because it's quite clear from the exploration of her as a person that she's really struggling in her life with everything, with her own children, her husband's children, what she has to deal with. She has a lot of stress, and I think it's clear that she's lonely and needs an escape. And I like that. I like that. It's like you say, it's what you've already said. It's soft, it's gentle, and it's humanizing rather than going right after them, calling them a liar, that sort of thing, and sensationalizing it a little bit.
One thing I did really like as well that I've just remembered is you get this kind of flip in attitudes with Neve and Rel. So as we're kind of building up to the climax at the end, Neve is a bit more hesitant, and he's a bit like, this is my life we're talking about. Like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with this. And he's just not really having a good time. But then when they get to Angela's house, it flips then, and Neve's like, I have to see this to the end. I have to find out everything. And Rel's like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable, guys. Like, I don't even know if we should be here. Like, I think we should go and all this. And he starts getting really twitchy. And Neve's like, nope, we're here now. I need to find out. I need the answers. I need to know the truth. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of flip and a bit of a twist, because that I wasn't really expecting. And you see their character development as well, even though it's a documentary. And, they haven't been told to say this. I assume it's not scripted or anything. So I thought that was really interesting that we get that from those two.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about things that we perhaps didn't like, that we might change. Alice, what do you reckon? Is there lots for you?
So there's just two things really that I'll bring up. The first one is that I don't know if this would work for modern audiences. I feel like it's very of its time. I feel like the only reason it's impressive and packs a punch is because of when it came out. Like I said, just before social media really took off and infiltrated our lives in the way that it did. And I feel like a modern audience watching it now, maybe 18, 19-year-olds, would be like, oh, how did he not know that she was fake? Like, you just spend like 5 minutes on social media and you'd find
just
she
video
was fake,
call
sort
them,
of thing.
just WhatsApp video call them.
Exactly,
or whatever,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think, if you haven't already seen it, I don't think it would pack a punch.
In the show now, is it still Facebook, or have they moved to all social media? Is it just like is it just they've been contacted on a platform?
Yeah,
or is it still
it's
Facebook?
all sorts. Yeah, no, it's Instagram. A lot of it is Instagram. Still some Twitter. Sometimes TikTok. Sometimes Facebook. But the main thing they use now, and this is Cammie's great idea, which sort of just hurries the thing along, is he checks something called Cash App, which I think is an app where you sort of switch, money around from one person to the next. Yeah. So if you put like someone's phone number in there, it just comes up with their name, and it's like, boom, there's the person.
Yeah.
So it's getting harder, I think. It is getting harder to catfish.
It's getting harder to pretend to be someone else on
it
the
is,
internet.
But they still come up, like they still manage it. Like some people, they'll still manage it and come up with like all these different lies and strands of stuff. So that's still quite engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the other thing?
So the other thing was that I think there was the odd lull in the pacing. And I don't want to say boring, but some of the time, like you say, because you feel like you're watching it in real time, sometimes you would just kind of be sat there looking at Neve as he tries to figure something out. And so it lost the pace a little bit in some areas. For me, because I really like Neve, because I like the concept, because I knew I'd like it anyway, it wasn't too much of a problem. But objectively, I could see that might be an issue for some people.
That was one of my issues with it, was that, and I think it probably comes down to because it's real.
Yeah.
So, real life can be boring. Sometimes when you do figure stuff out, it's not a cartoon light bulb or whatever. So that is maybe just a flaw in the format, in whatever, in the plot, whatever. But yeah, I think sometimes the pacing drops a bit, and it's not even. I don't know if it's not even. I don't even know if it's that it goes boring. It almost goes unfocused.
Hmm.
And because the intense bits are so intense, it's not so intense, you go a bit like, whoo, it's like you're going on a roller coaster sort of thing.
Yeah, you sort of really notice it, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Which is I guess is also a positive because it shows how well they captured the intensity of the bits where they are really going at it.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, definitely. And what else? Anything else for you?
Okay, so there's a point that I've got here, and
Oh, go on.
I'm really not sure what I make of it. But whilst I
Mhm.
was researching the film, it came up a couple of times on various different film sites, trivia's, and that sort of thing. And I don't know what you'll think about this, but you've already alluded to what you think of it, so I think you'll disagree. Which is that I believe there was some criticism when
Mhm.
this film came out around the authenticity of it.
Okay. All right.
With Neve, sorry, talking to the camera, sometimes perhaps it's a little bit staged. Now I don't know if because I was reading about the film whilst I was watching it, that's put the idea in my head.
Mhm.
Because I didn't particularly notice it, but I did notice a couple of things, which is I would say, and I put this to my partner who's seen the film and she completely disagreed with me, which is that there's some inconsistencies in Neve's intelligence levels.
Okay.
So he he doesn't know at one point that chickens lay eggs every day, but then he can figure out really quickly where the fact of recording has been taken off the internet. So I don't know. Is there any issues do you think around authenticity? I don't know really what I make of that because it's almost impossible to say. All I do know
Right.
is that a criticism of the film was around the authenticity of it. What do you think about that?
So I don't think that someone's knowledge of farmyard animals can really be compared to someone's knowledge of music on the internet. Like that's a
Yeah, no, I
very sort
understand
of
what you mean.
strange
Yeah.
comparison. I kept chickens. I don't even think I knew that they laid an egg every single day. I would just go down every now and then there'd be a few eggs there. So I don't know about that. Something that could be a thing is that maybe stuff happened or various things would happen off camera because obviously, Rel and Neve wouldn't always be in the same room together. And then Neve would tell Rel and be like, listen, this has just happened, or she's just told me this. And he's gone, right, well, you're going to need to do that again so that we can film it. So I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah,
that sort of thing was going on, but that's
yeah, that's a good
fine.
point.
And I,
That's a
and
good
I
point.
can accept that because it's not Big Brother, is it? There isn't a camera rolling in
And
his
that's
face
it. And
24/7.
because they're always talking, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is maybe when people say it feels staged, it's because actually it is in places, but that's not a bad
Yeah,
thing because if you've been texting someone overnight and the next day he sees his brother, he has to go, oh, you'll never guess what happened last night. We said this, we said this, we said this.
exactly.
So then
Yeah,
you get him going to the camera going, hey, check this out. And then
yeah,
going, look at the messages. And because he's not an actor,
yeah.
it probably feels a bit staged because essentially it is maybe. So as I say, that wasn't a criticism from me. I thought it was an
Mm.
interesting point and it did frame
Oh yeah, definitely.
a bit of how I viewed the film. Okay, so we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then. Now, I haven't seen this. I have done my
Hmm.
very best to avoid it. Alice, you've
Hmm.
got it in front of me, so let's
I
see.
have.
What do we think? How did it do?
Go on, give me a guess. What do you think?
Ooh, I forgot about that bit. I think it probably did quite middling to well with
Okay.
audiences. I don't know. You said it
Yeah.
did quite well with critics, so maybe the critics are giving it between the 7 and the 8s, and maybe the
Hmm.
audience are giving it between the I don't know 6s and 7s. I'm going to
Okay.
say overall, on average, it's coming in at a 7.
All right. Is
What,
that what
what
you would give it?
about that? Yeah, yeah, about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, about a 7. Yeah, yeah. What? How did it do? Lay it on me.
So on IMDb at the time of recording, it got 7.1 out of 10. And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience gave it 70% and the
Wow.
critics gave it 80%. So you were pretty accurate there,
Yeah.
feeling like the 7s into the 8s, and it does sort of creep up there with the critics. So I didn't think it's underrated. I don't think that's underrated. I think
No.
that's appropriately rated, but I do feel like it's underseen, and I do feel like it possibly doesn't really have a place with modern audiences, and I don't know if it's going to get a new audience, and I just
Yeah.
can't imagine people going back and watching it and enjoying it in the way that we did back then,
Yeah.
like when it came out. What say you?
I would completely agree. Do you think there's something to be said for the fact that it's underseen, but there's definitely a message in there that is worth looking out and checking out now?
I'd like to think so. I just think it's difficult to try and pull something like that into this year, like into 2022. It just feels so of its time. But yeah, it's a message of, people aren't perfect. People have problems and they express those problems in very odd ways sometimes, and sometimes in ways that can be destructive to other people. But that being kind in those moments is maybe more powerful than flying off the rails and, accusing people of all sorts left, right, and centre. And just nice to see as well where catfish came from, where that word came from as well, because in that sense, it's iconic. You could even say it's a classic because that word, I'm pretty sure that word's in the dictionary now. Like, you're a catfish.
As a verb, yeah, like as a verb, yeah, I think so. So there we go, appropriately rated but underseen.
And a little bit of a classic.
And somehow a little bit of a classic as well.
So there we go, listeners. Catfish, underseen, probably not underrated, about appropriately rated, and a little bit of a classic. That is another episode in the bag. Thank you all so much for listening. So, Josh, what are we watching next week?
Next week, I'm excited again.
Oh, he's excited again.
I'm excited again.
He changes colour when this happens as well.
I do. I'm like a chameleon. Next week, it's another little dose of reality, I think, actually, funnily enough. We're going to be watching and talking about The Damned United from 2009.
Oh, okay. Sounds football-y, I think.
Maybe. Couldn't possibly say, Alice.
All will be revealed.
So join us next week when we're going to be talking about The Damned United. If you'd like to get in touch with us in the meantime, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the usual ones. Just search for Films and That or just Films and That Pod, and you'll find us. We are also on your television sets.
We are indeed. So instead of just listening to us, you can watch us as well. If you
Lucky you.
If you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Liverpool, Leeds, or the North East, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. If you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. Or if you have Sky, you can find us on Channel 195. We are on the local TV network every Friday night from 6 o'clock, sometimes on Mondays as well.
Yes, there we go. You can check us out in a variety of places, and all that remains to be said is to join us next week when we're going to be talking about The Damned United. Alice Oliver, thank you for joining me this week.
Thank you so much, Josh. It was a pleasure as always.
And it's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.